Welcome back to MFO, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. Today we're going to talk about rattles. And I don't know whether you've thought a lot about, your crankbaits and things like that. A majority of the crankbaits that we throw have rattles in them. And the idea behind that is we want to call those fish in. We want to let those fish know that that's there, have them be able to focus in on it using their lateral line so that they can find that bait. There are times when rattles are absolutely very effective, and there are times when rattles are just the opposite of what you want. Let's talk about when to use them, when not to, when we come back. Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. I'm Mark Fisher. And we're talking about rattles today. And the first thing I'm going to kind of start off with is a lot of time, if you think about one of the best baits to throw in the springtime, would probably be a lipless crankbait, like a rattle trap. And obviously a lot of vibration, a lot of noise as that lipless crankbait's going through. We did an episode a while back did several episodes actually comparing different types of lipless crankbaits, and we heard all the different vibrations and rattles that different brands of lipless crankbaits have as they come through the water. And you can almost identify the brand with the sound that they make. That idea is, hey, that bait as it vibrates through the water is going to call those fish. Well, put those two factors together, springtime and fast moving baits moving through the water, that makes sense. But it makes sense from a standpoint of when do rattles work and when are they actually more of a detriment. In my opinion, the one time that rattles probably are not a good thing is when you've got bodies of water or areas in your lake that are being highly pressured. When you've got highly pressured areas, and the way I kind of look at it is, if you got a lot of noise, a lot of commotion, the last thing you want to do is be adding noise and commotion. You want to kind of slip in quietly at that point. That's the time when I would be throwing a crankbait that didn't have any kind of rattles, a silent crankbait. They even make silent running lipless crankbaits. Or you might be throwing something that is still a moving bait, but it doesn't have that, like maybe a swim jig or something like that. So if you've got a lot of pressure, meaning fishing pressure, a rattling crankbait may not be the thing that you want to be throwing. Think about it from a standpoint of a highly pressured area on your lake, and you're throwing that rattling crankbait. You can hear that coming long before you actually see it. Well, if you're conditioned to that, and you, as the bass, are conditioned to that, that's something to stay away from. On the other hand, if you've got a quiet running crankbait and there's been a lot of commotion, a lot of pressure, a lot of fishing, and then all of a sudden this quiet crankbait comes swimming by, that might catch the bass's attention almost in a surprised kind of way, which would trigger that bite. In the same way, maybe a swim jig would, or something along those lines. So the bottom line is, what I'm getting to here is that I think rattles are a good attractant on a lot of baits. When you're fishing in a situation that is not a highly pressured time of day or situation. So for example, first thing in the morning, a rattling crankbait, a rattle trap, even a jig that's got rattles on it. All of those things might be a good time to do that. But as the day goes on, as the fishing pressure increases, you may want to go to more silent types of presentations, whether it be a silent running crankbait or just a different type of bait completely that doesn't use rattles. Now, the other thing that I do want to say is the dirtier water, the more you may want to include those rattles with that, because now what you're doing is those rattles are compensating for the fish's lack of ability to see that bait. And so from that standpoint, the rattles may help. That becomes a situation where you want to kind of combine those two factors, because without being able to feel or hear those rattles and that noise, the fish may not be able to locate your bait in the first place. So that's my opinion on rattles. I do want to add one more tip to this, and this is something that I have yet to see be disproven, and that is, I've talked a lot about the fact that I put rattles in my frogs, and 90% of the time I will put rattles in my frogs. I don't know of a time when I've actually caught more fish on a frog that didn't have rattles than on one that did have rattles. And when I'm talking about rattles, I may just put a couple of rattles inside, maybe a couple of beads or metal BBs or things, just so that there's a little, vibration in that frog. I think that I've found that to be helpful. And so I don't know that in that situation, I've seen it where rattles ever, actually hurt the bite versus helping. But I also think that that's a situation where your frog, when it's going over the top of the grass, you're trying that fish, it's subtle, first of all, and the fish needs to locate and pinpoint that bait to be able to strike exactly where that bait is through the lily pads, through the grass, through the weeds that are on the top of the water. And so being able to have those rattles helps the fish to know exactly where that bait is. That's my opinion on rattles, guys. I'd love to hear your opinions on this, whether you use a rattling crankbait or a silent running crankbait, whether you've got both in your box or have you not gone out and spent money on silent running crankbaits. Love to hear your opinion. Let me know. Guys, if you haven't, please hit that subscribe button. We'd love it if you become part of the Mark Fisher Outdoors community, and we will see you again next week on Monday for another episode of Mark Fisher Outdoors. Take care, everybody.